Real quick, here's an article that says 6% of Americans think they could beat a grizzly bear in hand-to-hand combat. And later in the same article, it says 8% think they could take on an elephant.
What I thought was really interesting about that data is that there's not a huge disparity, especially so in the data it talks about how, in the smaller animals like rats and medium-sized dogs and stuff, a large majority of people think that they could confidently one-to-one hand-to-hand combat take on that animal and win. And then immediately after that, there's a very sharp decline in people's confidence the larger the animal gets. I think the next one is like an eagle and a goose. And first of all, we've talked about this before. Anyone who thinks they can take on a goose and win, completely fucking out to lunch. That
overestimating your abilities.
That should be a gauge on like how overconfident someone is in their own abilities. You should ask them, what do you think would happen if you tried to hand-to-hand combat a goose?
Right.
Like if they even think for half a second that they could win, done. Bye. You are delusional, my friend.
You're not getting out of the conflict with all your fingers and
right?
and all your eyelashes.
I almost had a battle and loss with my eyelash there in the last clip. I don't know if you were watching that.
I noticed that. You didn't even drop a beat. Just like, gonna fix my eyelash real quick.
It was like, so I use like a sticky tack kind of eyeliner almost to stick them on. And it was sticking to my eyelid above. So it was like opening my eye more than normal. It was very uncomfortable and very awkward looking on the camera. That's how I even noticed in the first place. I was like, why does one of my eyes look so much larger than the other one? Anyway, so the further you get down that scale where it gets to like a lion and a grizzly bear and, like I'm pretty sure a shark and stuff is on there. This almost same amount of women and men feel like they could confidently take on that large animal and win.
Yeah. Well, they mentioned this in the article that it's, as you said, there seems to be kind of like a bell curve, but they figure that those same 8% that say they could take on a gorilla are the same 8% that could say they take on a grizzly bear. So it almost seems to be indicating that 8% of people are just out to lunch. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Just no. But and it talks about the film The Revenant a lot, which seems to indicate they seem to be making a connection there. They're like, oh, people saw The Revenant, in which Leo DiCaprio gets his butt handed to him by a grizzly bear and barely makes it out of there. I think. But then shoots...
at one point, doesn't he kill it with a weapon and then like carves out the center of it and sleeps in it?
Yeah, I remember him.
I've never seen it, so
he's got. It's been a little while, but yeah, he has a rifle with him that I think barely saves his life. It's
like a Tatooine situation. You know how Luke like crawled inside of the fucking giant thing.
Yeah,
I feel like that was a thing that was in The Revenant, and maybe that's why. But I also got the sense that this article was written by someone who is not a man.
I don't know. It's
like
kind of
the tone of how they said some of the things.
It is very like informal, you know what I mean? Like it kind of just seems like an opinion piece or something like that.
This is absolutely a fluff piece. This is the stuff you read while you're taking a poop.
Yeah, it's on Relevant, which I don't know anything. It doesn't even have an author's name. I'm just noticing it just says by Relevant.
That's what I mean. Like I thought it was written by someone who wasn't a man, but I don't want to say that they're a woman because they could be,
who knows,
gendered. But at the same, just the tone of things, because some of the comments they made about specifically like guys seem to be always going for the eyes.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that sounds like something a snarky woman would say.
Yeah, guys are always going to go for the eyes. Yeah, like as if a grizzly bear.
That's a solid play, though. That's a solid play. Like, go for the eyes.
Yeah, I don't know though. The thing about a grizzly bear is like, what is a grizzly bear weigh? Like 3,000 pounds, and its eyeballs. I think
in the article it says 1,700. Oh, not against a grizzly bear. You would no against a grizzly bear. Like you pray for certain death. Because anything less than that is going to be horrific.
I would be praying that like lightning would strike the bear or something. It's like anything. Give me anything.
I would pray that lightning would strike me so I just die quickly.
Yeah, just finish this off. Maybe a T-Rex comes over and eats both of us or something.
Right? So good. But I was reading the list and I wouldn't even think that I could take on a rat. You
Well,
know, like the very first thing that article says is that rats could very well just run away from you forever and you would never win.
yeah.
And that is 100% true because I have shitty cardio and I don't run.
I
Also,
was
rats are cute
surprised.
and I wouldn't want to kill one.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly just don't want them around my, I don't want them in my apartment. If they
If
stay
I could
outside, no
domesticate it
problems.
and like make it a pet, yes.
Yeah,
Like, could I try and,
could grab
human
onto your
brain
hair and help
capture
you
it?
cook.
Right? Wouldn't that be great? Didn't I
I
talk about that the last time that I read this thing and it was like they should make a sequel and I thought Guy Fieri would just be doing that to a giant rat.
Guy Fieri would be the one under the rat's hat.
It would be a tiny Guy Fieri
Yeah.
and then a giant rat. And I
Let's
thought
go
the
to
rat would
Flavor
be,
Town.
well, he would be, yeah, the rat would be from New York and his name would be Tony.
Yeah,
He'd have a really great Brooklyn accent.
you're like a Tony Bourdain stand-in. Did those
Yeah.
two ever meet? I should look into that. I would be very
I
amused.
feel like on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, they did one.
I was surprised, going back to the article, at how few people thought they could take on a rat. Like, if
Yeah.
I'm interpreting this correct, which ones are the men and women? It's like 76% of men said they could take on a rat, 68% of women. I'm like, how is that not like 99%? That's
Well, you have to,
a
you have
quarter
to,
of people that can't take on a rat.
okay, so they only, how many people did it say that they surveyed for this? There was an actual number in there, if I remember correctly. I don't have the article pulled up, sorry.
I'm just looking at the charts here.
It
It's
was
all in
like,
percentages.
but there was a specific number of people I thought they said. Anyway, that specific demographic, like maybe a lot of those people are from New York and know that they can't take on a fucking rat because the rats there are like wild. Or maybe it's like people in an area where rats are pretty common and so it's something that they're like desensitized to, or vice versa, not, right? There's also an innate fear of rodents that human beings have for reasons that are unbeknownst to me, but probably backed up by science. So I mean,
But
like, there's lots of things to consider when you are trying to analyze the analyze the data. But I see what you're saying.
yeah, but that's, to me, that essentially says 1/4 of people couldn't win a fight against anything at all. You know what I mean? Like, if you can't do a rat,
I mean,
maybe they should have had like a dandelion as the last one. Could you win a fight against a dandelion?
I'm
How
going to
many
make the
people would
point
say
of in the
no?
last 2 years, how many people have lost a fight against a virus? Like, that's bacteria. You can't even see it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, going into something, if it was me, if I was on this survey, that's the kind of mentality I would have. And I'd be like, I would get taken out by a fucking sneeze. So,
Yeah.
like,
But the thing with the rat, I think people,
I
what you
couldn't
were
win a
talking
fight
about,
against a fish.
that a fish. Well, yeah, the thing about fish is like you could have a minnow or you could have a great white shark, like
But I
what
mean, like,
fish?
also, I'm allergic. Any of them.
Oh, that's
If I
right.
touch it, I'm gonna die. So, like,
But there's
but
people that
again, those are
couldn't.
the types of things that I consider.
It's like I have a poor, I shouldn't say, I have a tasteless opinion on like peanut allergies. I always found that strange to me, and almost like evidence against a god that like you can have
I
a
mean,
peanut and if you get a whiff of it, it kills you. Like,
yeah.
it seems like someone's saying to you, you should be dead. Like if just the smell of a peanut could kill you. And pardon me for shitting on people with peanut allergies, but that sucks to be that allergic to just the smell of peanuts.
I also think peanut allergies are like slightly made up.
But
That's probably a really problematic thing to say, but like, I remember growing up in the 90s, there was a kid in my class that if he ate, breathed, touched a peanut, he would die. Were we still allowed to bring peanut butter jelly sandwiches? Yes, because he would go and eat in the fucking library with the other kids that were allergic to shit. And then we would clean everything before he came back so he wouldn't die.
Wow, that's like quite the production. I don't remember going
like,
through any of that stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe my school experience was unique then. I did not think that that was an uncommon thing for children to experience in the 90s.
Yeah, I remember.
And that has shaped my opinion.
I remember them saying don't bring peanuts, but they never enforced it. Like, I remember I would take peanut butter sandwiches to school and stuff like that. Kids would have granola bars. I
The
don't
no
remember
peanut
anybody
thing,
dying.
the no peanut thing did not start being enforced, or even like, I don't remember it even being a thing until I was in high school. Like going to JD, and I asked people, I was like, are you allergic? Are you allergic? Are you allergic? I don't remember there ever being a single person being like, yes, I'm allergic to peanuts. We just weren't allowed to have them.
They all died in elementary school. They didn't make it to high school. That's so terrible. But you're saying on it being made up, I think there's some evidence that suggests it's like the way our diets and things work. Like, I think the peanut allergy is like a manifestation of our agriculture and our kind of like mechanized diet.
Well, I mean, it probably absolutely is. There's lots of things that, you know, when it comes to human biology, have changed over the last, you know, 40, 50 years because of the environmental impacts that are mostly man-made.
Yeah.
Like, we have changed so much shit about the world around us that our bodies are like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. Like, to me,
gluten intolerance, 100% I believe that that is in direct correlation to GMO wheat.
Yeah, I think the whole gluten thing, like if you look at where gluten is found, it's often found in what, like pastries and bread and things like that. If you just stop
anything that contains refined wheat.
Yeah. If you just stop eating those things, it's like you're probably improving your diet. That's always been my attitude towards gluten allergies. It's like, obviously you feel better, you're eating better, you know.
But before GMOs were a thing and people were eating tons of wheat, like, was that ever considered? And maybe I'm just like way off base here, and it's just because modern medical science has given us the answer to an age-old question, like, why do my guts always hurt? Like, I don't know. Like, what did lactose intolerant people do before that was a thing? Like, I don't know. Did they just shit themselves all day long?
Yeah, they were just gassy people.
Right? Like, I don't know.
But like
a trial and error to take things out of their diet. But I really do believe that a lot of, you know, allergies and things are a direct result of the way that human beings have impacted the environment around them.
Yeah, like I get real bad like pollen allergies. In Ontario in September, I'm just like a mess, all the ragweed and stuff like that. And it's like, it doesn't make sense to me because like we are creatures of the environment. We've evolved from the environment. How
BT dubs, to help remedy that, you should get some local honey from an apiary wherever it is that you grew up or live, and there's a ton of them around that area. BT dubs. And you're supposed to like take a, you know, small spoonful of it every day, because they collect pollen from the area that affects you, and it like slowly helps your body build like a tolerance to it.
Inoculation against pollen allergies.
I've been doing it with Zephyr because 2 years ago, like right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I think it's maybe just because we didn't go outside as much and he wasn't as exposed to it all the time. His allergies started getting insane to the point where like he couldn't go to school because he couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
So like I just trucked it over to the apiary and was like, hey, can I get some fucking honey, bro? Because we had to do it when we lived in Sudbury too. But
I've definitely heard about that strategy, and it makes sense to me. When you think about like the human evolution from being just like monkeys to being like hunter-gatherers, I'm like, how would anyone with a fish allergy or a nut allergy, how would they possibly survive? Like those are the foods that our ancestors were all over, right? You know what I mean? So like, I think your hypothesis about it must be something we're doing to the environment. Like if we were living outside all the time, how could you have a pollen allergy? You know, like you would just be exposed to it all the time. You would have died, and those genes would have been passed on.
So I also have a theory about specifically like the type of allergies that you're talking about with pollen. With the mass death of bees, there's just more pollen around to be breathed in by human beings.
You think
because they're not collecting it and turning it into shit? Absolutely. If it's enough to affect the way that crops grow, it's enough to affect the way that it goes into your body.
Yeah. I just like, I mean, think about seems like how many lot of pollen for bees. Like,
well, I mean, there's lots of videos, and I'm sure you can look them up on YouTube, on realistically how much one bee can collect in any given period of time. And like I've seen one of like a day, a week, a month. I think I saw one for like 6 months. And they just like had one single bee that they only let in a specific area. Like they tried to track it and keep it, you know, contained enough that they could control like what was going on there. And bees, one single bee makes way more honey than you ever thought.
Yeah, and they
You know,
collect
especially
that
when
much
left to its own
pollen.
devices. Yeah, because I mean, when they live in a colony, they know, okay, I have to collect this much because there's that many other ones. But when there's just one of them, it's like, ah, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, in that sense, I think there's just a lot more pollen, and that's why people are more affected by it now. But to loop back to our article here, I think a lot of things have changed in our environment that make us have more hubris when it comes to specifically the types of animals that we encounter. Because, like, first of all, and this maybe speaks to my point of like how many people are desensitized to seeing rats and think that they could win. There's just a lot of people who live in a lot of places where there's a lot of rats. But
Yeah.
how many people live in places where they regularly encounter grizzly bears? None, because they
Yeah.
don't know how, and so by nature, they just don't know how dangerous or large they actually are,
Yeah.
you know? And so I think that's maybe why there's like that really steep curve where like some of the more common stuff, people are like really, you know, confident because they encounter those things on a daily basis. And then like when you think about humans from an evolutionary standpoint, there was a point in time where we were just terrified of everything. That's why we lived
Mm.
in caves.
Yeah.
You know, there was, you couldn't get any attacked from behind. You could see everything that was coming at you. And then
Yeah.
we like slowly evolved to a point where we felt safe to build like domiciles and then go outside that, you know, were relatively good viewpoints from all angles. And, you know, we learned through trial and error that certain types of things were less likely to kill you, so you didn't have to be as afraid of them. And I think we talked about how domestication of dogs was a thing.
Mm.
And like, imagine a human being encountering a dog for the very first time. They were probably deathly scared of it and we're like, oh my god, this thing's gonna fucking kill me, I could never win a fight against this.
Yeah.
And then over time encountered them again and again and again, and slowly became more confident that, oh, I can bend this thing to my will.
Yeah. Yeah, that's certainly interesting. I think there's a lot of truth to that, that, you know, how many people are encountering grizzly bears and thus have a reasonable interpretation of what a grizzly bear is. Sometimes I think, you know, people see pictures of them in what calendars and whatever here. People don't realize how gigantic these things could be, right? Like until you go and see one, like a moose. Do you think people
Yeah.
know exactly how absolutely gigantic a moose is?
The very
They're
first time I ever saw a moose, I nearly shat myself.
they're
Because I was in the
huge.
back of a Greyhound bus and I was looking at it at eye level.
Yeah.
And like, as a human being, I know how big a Greyhound bus is. So for then me to be looking at a moose in the eyeballs,
Yeah.
sitting in one, I was like, oh my sweet Jesus.
Yeah. I'm not going out there.
Because I
That
mean,
thing's huge.
right? We were stopped on the road. There was like some of them that were, there was a bunch of them that were like trying to cross. We were on a school trip to Ottawa. And we were coming up from like the highway point, actually just outside of Newmarket here, and going up through kind of like that pass that like misses Sudbury and North Bay and shit.
Hmm.
And so we're just like in the middle of fucking nowhere, and there's this family of moose, and they were like walking around the bus at one point. So you have 50 fucking 12-year-old kids or 11-year-old kids, however the fuck old we are, freaking out and yelling inside this bus because there's these giant ass moose.
Yeah.
Because none of us have ever seen them growing up in Midwestern Ontario. When I lived in Sudbury, I saw a lot more of them. I also saw a bear like up close for the first time, and I absolutely did poop myself. I will admit that as a full-grown adult woman, I pooped myself.
Yeah.
Because I thought for sure I was gonna die.
Oh, they're huge. Like I feel like I've seen any of those animals like at the zoo is it's not the same as seeing it in the wild, right? Like the only time I've seen
I mean, I was sitting on my front fucking porch. I was within reaching distance of my front door,
yeah,
and I thought I was gonna die.
it's a lot more different when there's like a 3-foot section of like plexiglass between you and, you know, the tiger or whatever it is you're looking at versus turning around and it's eating your garbage or something, you know, like.
Well, I mean, I think as human beings, we also recognize that like wild feral animals versus something that we have captured and then hold captive have very different behaviors.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the time they don't want anything to do with you, you know, like the stuff at the zoo is desensitized to people.
I'm glad that zoos are becoming less popular. Like, I always hated going to the zoo. The very last time we went, when Zephyr and I were in Vancouver on vacation, we went to the Vancouver Zoo, and it is by far the saddest fucking thing I've ever seen, and we refuse to go anymore. It
Yeah.
was like pouring rain that day too. Rain the whole way, the drive from Maple
Well, that's
Ridge
just
to
Vancouver for you.
to the zoo. And it stopped long enough for us to like walk around and stuff. But we were the only people there, right? It was pouring rain all day, so everything was soaking wet. A lot of the animals were like not out or whatever at the time anyway. But the people that even worked there were just miserable. And like the giraffes, this is when I knew we couldn't do it anymore. So like when giraffes are trying to be really aggressive with each other, they kind of like do this weird almost like circle pit thing where they like walk around each other but in a circle, and then they smack each other with their fucking horns. They have those little stubby bits,
Right. Yeah.
right? Yeah. And they like bend their necks over and they'll try and like jab the other one's body. And there was two of them just
Wailing
we
each
watched
other.
them for like, yeah, we watched them for like 20 minutes because Zephyr, his cute little innocent heart, thought that they were in love and that they were trying to kiss each other.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, those two giraffes are trying to kill each other. Like,
yeah. This is like an MMA
is,
fight between giraffes.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? And the enclosure that they had them in was like so small, and it was just very sad overall. So I'm glad that zoos are becoming less common, and hopefully that instills some of that like fear back in human beings that like wild animals can absolutely and will absolutely fucking kill you if you try and step to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I going to the Vancouver aquarium was like, it just made me so sad, and I still have all the pictures from it. And it's like you see these giant whales, beluga whales. They're like a in-ground swimming pool that you would see in Hanover. It's like not a lot of space.
Yeah.
And
I think there's also I read this article about because I was watching this documentary, so the article got presented to me as like a piece of suggested content. I was watching this like documentary kind of thing that was broken up on TikTok about the orca that was being kept at, I want to say it was Seattle, but it was somewhere in Washington or Oregon. And just kind of like the situations, but it was like how the whale the glass that was like in between the viewing section and the actual whale itself was made in such a way that it made the whale look smaller. So like it makes me wonder,
deliberately, you're saying.
Yeah. So it makes me wonder if as human beings we've been presented with this kind of skewed version of these wild animals, A, to make us less afraid of them and to make them a consumable good, but then also B, to like lull us into a sense of
comfort, I guess.
The appropriate word for it.
Or acceptance.
Like it's like false security, you know, to feel like, oh, okay, human beings 100% tamed this wild animal, so if they can do it, I can do it too. You know, it's that same monkey see, monkey do business.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately kind of split on zoos. I generally don't like them. You know, I'm trying to think about like the ways they improved my understanding of animals and things like that. Like ever since I was a kid, I've always loved animals. So going to see them is quite a thrilling experience. You know, it's one thing to go see horses or goats or something that are very common in your community. It's very exciting to go see, you know, a zebra.
We went to Goats on the Roof outside of like Abbotsford or wherever. That was the funniest thing I'd seen in a long time.
Yeah. Goats are, I love goats.
Goats are funny. I adore
they are
goats.
funny.
They're so funny. And like their little eyes, even though they creep the fuck out of me, love it.
They're square pupils, yeah.